Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. U.S. President Donald Trump confirms he'll meet with Iranian officials next week as the world watches for a new nuclear deal. Fuel prices may drop next week, with global oil now stabilizing after the Iran-Israel ceasefire. And here at home, DepDev calls on the new Congress to fast-track reforms to power Philippine growth and modernize national policy. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will meet with Iranian officials next week to negotiate a possible new nuclear deal, though he did not disclose which officials or where these talks would take place. Trump claims American airstrikes obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities, even comparing the aftermath to the end of World War II. But a fresh assessment from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency says the damage may be far less severe, with Iran's nuclear program set back by just a few months. For global markets, the uncertainty keeps geopolitical risk elevated. Investors are watching for signs of de-escalation as oil prices, safe haven flows, and defense stocks remain sensitive to every new headline.
But had we not succeeded with that hit ended the war. That hit ended the war. I don't want to use an example of Hiroshima. I don't want to use an example of Nagasaki. But that was essentially the same thing. That ended that war. This ended that with the war. If we didn't take that out, they'd be fighting right now.
Global markets trade sideways as investors balance geopolitical relief with uncertainty over U.S. monetary policy. Wall Street ends mixed, cooling Middle East tensions help sentiment, but traders remain on edge over the timing of the Fed rate cuts. Fed Chair Jerome Powell, on day 2 before Congress, says the central bank is taking a wait-and-see approach, wanting to first assess the full impact of Trump's tariffs on U.S. inflation. Markets now see just a 25% chance of a cut in July and a 67% probability by September.
Post 2 rally days on Monday and Tuesday after the ceasefire over the weekend with Iran and Israel, we're just seeing the market take a moment and digest and kind of trade sideways. No meaningful news. Lots of talk in the markets related to potential Fed policy, potential the outcome of what's next with Iran and Israel, but nothing really moving markets today.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by 0.25%. Now the S&P 500 closed flat and the Nasdaq added 0.3%. Over in Europe, stocks closed lower amid weak economic reads. The FTSE 100 slipped 0.5%. Germany's DAX lower by 0.6%, and France's CAC 40 down by 0.8%. With geopolitical fears easing, oil markets are beginning to steady, offering some relief for energy importing countries like the Philippines. Global crude prices have stabilized after plunging roughly $10 per barrel over just the last 2 days. Benchmark U.S. crude is up 55 cents to $64.92 a barrel. But that's still well below pre-conflict levels before fighting erupted between Israel and Iran nearly 2 weeks ago. Both sides appear to be honoring a fragile ceasefire, at least for now. Here at home, Jetty Petroleum President Leo Velas expects a slight rollback in local pump prices next week, a potential breather for consumers and logistics costs. President Bongbong Marcos says that the Philippine economy can withstand the aftershocks of the Iran-Israel war, calling the impact manageable for now. He cites stabilizing global oil prices after the ceasefire, while socioeconomic planning chief Arsenio Balisacan describes the overall effect as minimal. Marcos met with his economic team on Tuesday to review the potential fallout, focusing on energy prices, import costs, and supply chains. With world prices now easing, the president sees no urgent need to roll out new fuel subsidies for public transport, farmers, or fisher folk. The Philippine economy is expected to pick up pace in the second quarter, with growth likely hitting 5.6%, according to the University of Asia and the Pacific. In its latest market call report, UANP says that's slightly faster than the 5.4% recorded in the first quarter, but still slower than the 6.5% posted in the same period last year. It also falls short of the government's full-year growth target of 6 to 8%. Economists attribute the modest improvement to stable inflation and a stronger labor market. But they say a faster recovery will require stronger consumer spending, investment inflows, and better public infrastructure absorption. On another front, tensions in the Middle East aren't just driving up oil prices and shaking up the stock market. They're putting pressure on the Philippine insurance industry too. From investment jitters to shrinking household budgets, insurers warn that protection matters most when global crises strike. Sujin Kim has that story.
It's not just banks and the stock market feeling the heat as tensions brew across the Middle East and other global flashpoints. Philippine insurers are bracing for potential claim surges and uncertainty in investment returns. PruLife UK warns that geopolitical shocks like the Israel-Iran conflict go beyond oil supply disruptions. They ripple through the financial system and hit insurers as well.
Of course, we're all concerned about the effects of geopolitical. Geopolitical risks are always present in any business, including insurance companies. I mean, we are primarily a financial institution, and of course, any geopolitical instability will, of course, affect our ability to offer better products, to maintain our position in the market.
But of course, we're not immune to the secondary effects. I think primarily because of the market volatility, that would impact definitely investment portfolios, particularly for the life insurers.
Layer in inflation and the pressure mounts. Higher oil and food costs are eroding purchasing power and pushing operating expenses up. And when money gets tight, insurance is often the first thing cut from the household budget.
Yung insurance kasi, as we all know, parang last product in your mind na yan eh. So it's not normal, it's not a product that you'll normally think of buying immediately. No? Walang ganong pull.
But insurers say that's exactly when protection is most needed. During a crisis, whether it's a medical emergency, a disaster, or a job loss, insurance is meant to be the first line of defense. Yet the numbers tell a different story. Most Filipinos remain underinsured. With penetration still below 2%, the Philippines trails far behind regional benchmarks, a gap insurers are determined to close.
We do see that people will require more protection. We believe people will need more protection products and ordinary life products, health insurance.
Insurance companies are working to change the mindset.
Ang kulang sa Filipino community is insurance. Even if you say na ang affected dyan yung mga investments nila in equities, debts, kung nawala lahat ng investments niya, wala siyang pagkukuha ng funds. And that's where insurance comes in.
And to stay resilient, companies are reinforcing their capital positions and redesigning strategies to weather global shocks.
We have strong capital positions, so we've been maintaining consistently yung capital well above what the regulators require, so that ensures resilient tayo even under such stress scenarios. So in terms of our investment strategy, we design it in a way na ma-mitigate yung mga concentration risk, so may diversification built in. Especially, there should be enough cushion against mga global market swings.
They're also ramping up enterprise risk management, tracking volatile scenarios in real time and stress testing against escalations.
For in life, we monitor and respond to emerging risks in real time. In fact, we're now scheduling an emerging risk assessment workshop, so to update our emerging risk radar. And geopolitical tension is definitely a key focus area.
Insular Life notes a likely rise in demand for income replacement products, particularly for OFWs who may be exposed to economic shocks abroad. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Department of Economy, Planning and Development, or DepDev, is urging the next Congress to fast-track two stalled economic priorities: a national land use policy and a centralized water agency. Both are seen as foundational to long-term growth, sustainability, and investor confidence. DepDev Secretary Arsenio Balisacan says he's counting on the new legislature to sustain momentum for the Marcos administration's reform agenda. With a fresh set of lawmakers, including half of the Senate, taking office this July. Balisacan says the passage of the Water Resources Bill and Land Use Act is crucial to improving governance and creating a stronger platform for future economic development. And while lawmakers are being urged to act swiftly on economic reforms, pressure is also building on President Marcos to greenlight a bill that could transform digital access nationwide. 35 organizations are urging the president to sign the Konektadong Pinoy Bill, a landmark measure aimed at expanding affordable internet access across the country. Supporters say that the bill will boost competition, lower costs, and bridge the digital divide, especially in the 19,000 barangays still without internet. They dismissed security concerns as unfounded, pointing out that the bill includes strict cybersecurity safeguards. It also bans foreign state-controlled entities from operating networks. Those who signed the joint statement include industry groups, tech organizations, and foreign chambers of commerce and industry. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Let's check on how Asian markets are doing this Thursday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is up by a full percent. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index down by 0.5%. Shanghai's Composite flat with a downward bias. And Singapore's Straits Times Index is flat with a slight upward bias. Now, here at home, the main gauge extended its gains yesterday, Wednesday, riding on optimism over the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And while a stronger peso fueled that sentiment, the PSE index climbed 0.5% to close at 63.26, tracking regional gains amid easing oil prices and a weaker dollar. But despite that lift, trading remained sluggish. Value turnover came in thin at just 4.3 billion pesos, well below the year-to-date average, while foreign funds were net sellers, offloading 331 million pesos worth of shares. Now, near-term analysts expect sentiment to remain cautious as markets await Fed Chair Jerome Powell's testimony for clues on a possible U.S. rate cut. Locally, a stronger peso and lower oil may provide support, but light trading could cap any upside without a clear catalyst. Now, as of 10:18 this morning, the main gauge is in the red, but not by much, down by 0.2% to 63.11. Broader all shares index down as well, while flat with a downward bias at 37.52. As for the sub-indices, we're seeing a mixed picture. The financials, holding firms, services, and mining and oil counters are leading the market's declines, whereas the industrial and property counters are keeping that downside limited. Total volume is thin at 97 million shares, valued at a little over 1 billion pesos. Market breadth is positive, though. We've got 72 advancers, 56 decliners, and 42 stocks unchanged. So the market may just turn based on market breadth. Now, in the currency market, the peso opened stronger at 56.65 to the dollar, firmer than Tuesday's close of 56.71. Counterfeit currency is back on the rise, with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas reporting a nearly 20% jump in fake banknotes last year, despite better detection by banks. In 2024, the BSP found 13.2 counterfeit notes for every 1 million genuine banknotes in circulation, up from 12.2 in 2023. The central bank says cash handlers have gotten better at spotting fake notes, but warns that counterfeiters may be taking advantage of inflation and a still cash-heavy economy. The BSP is urging the public to be more vigilant and to know the security features of Philippine banknotes, especially as cash remains king in many parts of the country. On another front, Philippine Bank of Communications, or PBCom, announces the resignation of 3 senior executives as the bank navigates headwinds following a profit decline in 2024. Stepping down are Vice President Enrico Indita, Senior Vice President for Enterprise Risk Roland Paul San Diego, and First Vice President for Trust and Wealth Dreda Teresa Mendoza. The bank attributes the resignations to personal reasons, but they do come on the heels of a 5% drop in net income to 473 million pesos last year, driven by higher operating costs and weak trading performance, even as core lending remains strong. With global automakers restructuring supply chains to avoid tariff shocks and geopolitical risks, the Philippines is making a strategic play to position itself as an alternative hub. The government is ramping up efforts to lower tariff and expand free trade agreements to strengthen its local automotive supply base and to attract more investors. The Philippine Economic Zone Authority says talks are ongoing with car makers from India, Taiwan, and China, while FTA negotiations with the EU, India, and Canada are gaining ground. Right now, 68 automotive companies operate in the Philippine ecozones, employing over 50,000 people and driving 100 billion pesos in investments. But business groups warn to compete globally, the Philippines must improve incentives, reduce red tape, and create a clear long-term roadmap for the industry. On another front, the Middle East conflict is driving oil prices higher, reigniting fears of a supply shock and adding pressure on Filipino households already struggling with transport costs. For some, it's a tipping point, pushing consumers to consider electric and hybrid vehicles. This shift isn't just about savings, it's about choosing cleaner, smarter, and more resilient ways to move. Our mobility correspondent, G. Baroga, has the details.
Interest in new energy vehicles, or NEVs, is definitely charging up. Sales of electric and hybrid cars more than doubled in May to over 3,600, a 139% month-on-month surge. This reflects growing interest in alternative vehicles as fuel prices continue to climb. Global oil markets remain volatile, with Israel-Iran tensions stoking price fears. But Vince Socco, chairman of GT Capital Auto and Mobility Holdings, says the transition to EVs is not new. It began in the early 2000s with the Toyota Prius, marking the first wave of hybrid adoption.
The most important thing is that the shift or transition to electrified mobility is not really a short-term knee-jerk reaction. It's not because oil prices are high. It's a more evergreen trend, I think, because it's something which we as a society and as economies really have to pursue if we are going to build a sustainable future.
He says there's no better time to shift, especially as the transport sector remains a major contributor to carbon emissions. Hybrid vehicles continue to lead the EV market in the Philippines, favored for not requiring charging infrastructure.
There's no discounting which technology will work best or better. It all depends on the surrounding circumstances and environment that would, in fact, enable or entice car owners or car buyers to choose a particular technology. Because at the end, customers get to decide which one works best for them.
Hydrogen cars may be a future option. It's not yet here in the Philippines, but Toyota recently showcased its Corolla Cross hydrogen concept in an exclusive media event.
Unlike battery electric vehicles, it doesn't really require any extra infrastructure. It's just the production of hydrogen fuel. So it's just how quickly, again, and how quickly we can make the production of hydrogen fuel more economical and affordable, and distribute this widely across the country.
Southeast Asia is moving at different speeds when it comes to the phase-out of vehicles with internal combustion engines, but Socco believes the Philippines doesn't need to rush. The Department of Energy also supports the shift, especially for public utility vehicles. Acting Secretary Sharon Garin says even if fuel prices go up, the impact on EV users is small. Plus, EVs are still exempt from coding.
Lowering carbon emissions is the ultimate goal. Whether it's hybrid, electric, or hydrogen, the hurdle now is bringing more options to the market and building the infrastructure to support them. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
We're taking a quick break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. ICC Assistant to Counsel Attorney Cristina Conti says former President Rodrigo Duterte is unlikely to be granted interim release as the International Criminal Court weighs possible action on his role in the Philippines' deadly war on drugs.
Sa itsura nito, di lumiliit talaga yung tsansa na makalaya si Duterte. Kasi sa pagpapakita ng Office of the Prosecutor, maski sila nag-aagam-agam na palayain si Duterte. Kumbaga sa ngayon, walang basehan ang pagpapalaya kay Duterte.
Conti cites three main arguments from prosecutors. One, Duterte is considered a flight risk, having repeatedly rejected the ICC's jurisdiction. Two, his wide influence and resources could undermine the investigation. And three, there are fears he could commit further offenses if released. But former Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo dismisses those claims, saying prosecutors are simply responding to public pressure from victims and rights groups.
Baka nangyari dyan, talagang hindi ino-oppose yan. No? Kasi matagal niya na sinabi, mga 2-3 weeks ago naman yan, di ba? Baka yun ang usapan. Kasi pwede naman mangyari yan.
The ICC has not yet set a timeline for decision, but legal experts say the outcome could set a major precedent for global accountability in domestic drug wars. Now, back on Philippine roads, a different kind of accountability is in focus. The Department of Transportation is standing by the citizen who uploaded a viral video exposing racing buses operated by GV Florida. This after the bus company threatened to file a case against the video uploader. Transport Secretary Vince Dizon says, "Don't worry, we've got your back." The DOTR is now urging the public to continue reporting abusive and reckless drivers, promising protection for all whistleblowers. Now, from the streets to your screens, the Philippine National Police is going digital. The PNP's Communications and Electronic Services Division has launched the PNP Mobile Services app, which is designed to streamline access to police services and strengthen public engagement. The app features multiple functions, including hotlines, document requests, and an e-sumbong system for reporting incidents.
Nandun po pwede nyo pong makita po doon yung mga official websites and official social media accounts po ng ating mga PNP units. Nandun din po yung mga telepono. Nandun na rin po naka-incorporate, sir, yung 911 on how to use the 911 mechanism. Nandun na rin po yung tumatayo na rin po na isumbong system po na yan.
The app is currently available on Android, but officials say they're also working to integrate it into the national eGov platform for wider access. The Philippines is moving closer to mainstreaming solar energy with the new rules for rooftop projects expected by the third quarter, according to the Energy Regulatory Commission. Energy Undersecretary Rowena Guevara says solar rooftops are still rare in most buildings, despite a surge in interest. She says the department has received numerous applications, particularly from industrial zones that could support high-capacity installations. The new rules are seen as a key step toward making clean energy more accessible to homes and businesses across the country. Senate President Chiz Escudero wants to give the Finance Department the power to suspend value-added tax on fuel as global oil prices rise once again. Here's Hannah T. with the details.
The ongoing conflict in the Middle East is pushing global oil prices up. That translates to costlier transport, goods and services in the country. Senate President Cheese Escudero is reviving a proposal to give the Finance Department a standby authority to cut the value-added tax on fuel whenever prices surge beyond expectations.
Pabor ako dyan noong paman. So, kailangan ng panukalang batas nga para magawa yun.
Escudero first proposed this under the train law, but it was dropped from the final version. He says the VAT system being percentage-based leads to unintended windfalls for government when crude oil prices jump from $40 to $100, leaving consumers to shoulder the impact. Escudero plans to file a bill that will not only revive the standby authority, but also set a clear price trigger for when it can be used. He adds that measures of oil price should be based on more accurate standards, like the means of Platts of Singapore.
Nasa ipa-file namin tiyak yung standby authority na nais namin ibigay sa DOF o sa presidente man na babaan yung value-added tax o i-fix yung excise tax para sa akin mas accurate yung MOPS.
Escudero clarifies the president has no power to suspend taxes, even in times of crisis. Only Congress can amend or suspend tax laws.
Walang kapangyarihan ng Pangulo magsuspende ng buwis.
But the president may temporarily adjust tariffs on fuel imports if needed, as long as Congress is in recess. On calls to repeal the oil deregulation law amid the Middle East crisis, Escudero says such proposals resurface when prices rise, but fade when they drop. That law allows oil companies to freely set prices based on world market rates without needing government approval. For now, he wants a flexible system that can quickly respond to global oil shocks without burdening the Filipino people. Hannah T. Bilyonaryo News Channel.
We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Iran's elite military force is sounding the alarm, warning adversaries against any miscalculation as troops remain on standby amid fragile calm. The statement from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps comes in the wake of Israel's June 13 airstrikes, which targeted top Iranian generals, nuclear scientists, and key atomic facilities. Iran quickly struck back, but the escalation lasted just 12 days before a ceasefire was brokered by U.S. President Donald Trump. A U.S. brokered ceasefire brings a sense of calm back to Israel, with many Filipinos there finally able to sleep peacefully after weeks of airstrikes and uncertainty. In an interview on BNC's Agenda, Philippine Ambassador to Israel Eileen Mendiola expresses hope that the ceasefire will hold.
Punong-puno na yung kalsada ng traffic, ng mga tao naglalakad. So it's back to normal na dito sa Israel. We're hopeful na that the two sides will abide by the agreement na tuloy-tuloy yung ceasefire.
Ambassador Mendiola says some of the 340 Filipinos who initially requested repatriation have chosen to stay, while about 20 are still expected to fly home this week. She also confirms that at least 8 Filipinos were critically injured and over 100 lost their homes during the conflict. And while the world watches the Middle East, accountability for war crimes moves forward in Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signs an agreement with the Council of Europe on Wednesday to set up a special tribunal to prosecute Russia for the crime of aggression against his country. Zelensky signed the document together with Council of Europe Secretary General Alain Berset before Council members. The tribunal's mandate is to prosecute senior Russian leaders for the crime of aggression against Ukraine.
This is a really, truly very important step. Today we are launching the process to create a tribunal for Russia's crime of aggression against Ukraine. Every war criminal must know there will be justice, and that includes Russia. And we are now boosting the legal work in a serious way. There is still a long way to go. Politically, we have already made big progress, and I'm grateful to the Committee of Ministers, to the Council of Europe, and to everyone showing leadership.
Still on Ukraine, their president, Volodymyr Zelensky, made a diplomatic statement suiting up for his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the NATO summit at The Hague. This move comes months after Trump criticized Zelensky for meeting him in the Oval Office without a suit. But beyond appearances, the stakes are high. Zelensky is pushing to rebuild U.S. support and lock in more military aid, including the Patriot missiles Kiev needs to fend off Russia. Trump has hinted he may consider more assistance, but with conditions still unclear, Zelensky is fighting to keep America firmly in Ukraine's corner.
Oh, you're all dressed up today.
Hi, yes, I had to. How are you, Mr. President?
He's all dressed up today.
From diplomatic signals to domestic policy shifts, governments across Asia are taking a tougher stance on controversial issues. Thailand is now moving to recriminalize cannabis just 2 years after it delisted the drug as a narcotic and sparked a billion-dollar industry boom. A new order from the Thai Health Ministry will ban the recreational cannabis sales and require a doctor's prescription for use. This leaves thousands of dispensaries, many of them small businesses, in legal limbo. The policy reversal comes amid a political shakeup, with the pro-cannabis Bumjai Thai party exiting Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin's ruling coalition. Thavisin's government has criticized the lack of regulation in the industry and says it wants to protect the youth and public health. The shift could have big economic implications. Their cannabis sector, once projected to reach $1.2 billion by 2025, is now bracing for possible widespread closures and job losses. For neighboring countries like the Philippines, where legalization remains off the table, Thailand's pivot may serve as a cautionary tale in balancing growth with regulation. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BMC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.